Assalamu alaikum and welcome to Perspective. We'll be talking about the situation as far as after the attack we've seen on the police carrying out a patrol in Nowshera district of Khyber Pakhtunkhwa, which borders Afghanistan. The ramifications of this attack, overall the situation in Afghanistan, also the TTP claiming responsibility, what this means overall for our relationship with Afghanistan, for overall the security situation as far as things are concerned. We'll be talking about that a little later on. We'll also be talking about politics, and of course we've seen the Prime Minister criticize Imran Khan on his statement against democracy, parliamentary style of democracy, which is something that we've been consistently talking about. The former Prime Minister and his take on what he views as parliamentary democracy. A little later on, we'll be talking about that side of things. I have with me Rana Athar Javed, who's a senior analyst. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you very much.
Rana Sahab, overall the situation, we've seen the attack happen, we've seen the TTP claim responsibility. What is your take on the overall situation at this time, as far as Afghanistan is concerned, as far as our relationship? Of course, we've done all we can to try to do our part in stabilizing the situation. But of course, there are a host of issues, and we do, of course, they're our neighbors and we share a lot of issues. Also the humanitarian aspect which we were earlier talking about. What is your overall take on the situation?
Well, thank you very much. I think overall the situation in Afghanistan, of course, is very complex.
Right.
Given the fact that since the Taliban's inception and the facilitation, of course, of the international community and all the Doha peace process, which we facilitated, and United States led actually the entire process of having Taliban. And Taliban, of course, there was no resistance, and because the international community and the international forces decided to withdraw from Afghanistan and brought the Taliban back. The main issue basically Taliban faced from the start and still facing is the financial constraints. Their money, Afghanistan's money sitting in the US banks have not been released, and they were promised to release the money because in order for them to run the government, the governance and all the systems in all the provinces, that has been actually unfortunately have not been released. The humanitarian crisis is manifold because of the a report of the UNICEF and United Nations, several reports have indicated that there are going to be a very harsh, dark winter for the Afghan children, and there is a danger and risk of hundreds of deaths because of lack of financial resources. As far as we were talking about before the program, that the situation in Afghanistan, it must be looked in a holistic regional and international perspective.
The way that we saw, of course, the US departure from Afghanistan, the abrupt nature of it, we've been talking about that for a while. Of course, Pakistan has been rallying behind Afghanistan for no other reason except for the humanitarian crisis of unparalleled proportions we are seeing. Like you said, again, we are seeing winter approaching. The overall situation on the ground is terrible. Do you feel that the world community could perhaps have reacted in a better manner to this crisis, and we are not seeing that kind of help that should have come forward?
Actually, this is what I was about to say to you. The issue here is about the financial resources not provided, and then the direct implication is the law and security, because the situation can get worse and worse, both on humanitarian and internal security for the Taliban. On the one hand, the regional players, India included and other countries, they are really supporting the anti-Taliban at the moment, the Daesh and all other international terrorist networks who directly targeting Taliban leadership, mid-ranking, high-ranking, also the allies of the Taliban. And on the other hand, you do not have the funds to run the hospital and paying the salary for the school teachers and all that. And at the top, as you said, that the winter is approaching, the world community, of course, could have done a lot better, at least release their money, which they promised that they would, sitting in the US banks and other Western countries' capital. So I think it is the responsibility mainly of course, of the world community.
Right.
But for the Taliban, of course, we all understand there are several demands which the world community makes.
That's also an issue as far as the Taliban is concerned, and of course we've also seen the world have double standards, because
Yes.
Kashmir is another case in point. There are other regions
Yes.
also, and we don't see them, you know, the kind of reaction.
Not asking India to stop gross violation of human rights or you know, state-sponsored killing or terrorism in Kashmir. Instead, of course, the Taliban are at the moment, as we can say, that the international community have praised also the Taliban, the way they are governing. But the problem remains that the international community, especially the United States, the European Union, despite of the fact they are boiled in another war between Russia and Ukraine, their resources needed to be here in Afghanistan in order to prevent you know, industrial scale catastrophe regarding humanitarian crisis.
Now, Azab, this particular attack that happened, the recent one, of course, it also happened right after the State Foreign Minister Hina Rabbani Kar returned. The timing of it, do you think it's significant? Because, of course, you know, in terms of the visuals that went out into the world, of course, you know, we saw a woman, a Pakistani parliamentarian, our state minister, be there for talks. And then we see this attack. Do you think that's significant in any manner?
Yeah, I think, to be honest, the TTP, and also they're trying to assert that their will and their version, of course, on the Pakistani territory, which will never be accepted. Pakistan armed forces and the law enforcement forces has given tremendous sacrifices, and so are the Pakistani people. I think in terms of, Ms. Hina Rabbani Kar, I would say that, of course, it's a matter of should be pride for Pakistan to be represented by a woman, and she's internationally respected and also nationally in terms of her ability about the foreign affairs and about the way she negotiates. And also, you know, in Pakistan we are a pragmatic democratic society. Our intake on religion is exactly you know, the way the religion tells you that there is no compulsion and transgression on the practices. Everybody knows it's a Muslim country, and we do know how to practice and how to we represent. So Hina Rabbani Kar carrying herself the way she is also an evidently clear fact that Pakistan supports the current regime of Taliban, and we want them really doing well in their administration, their governance, and we want to help them to understand the complexities, whether it relates to finances and others, and economy and law and order. But this is again, this rests with the Taliban, that how do they want to run their country?
Right, of course. But overall, as far as the Taliban are concerned, and within the situation within Afghanistan, we were also earlier talking about the fact that Taliban being, you know, their grip on their own country, is it strong enough? We are also, you know, Al-Qaeda, ISIS, all of these other fragments within Afghanistan. How significant is their role at this time?
I think Taliban's grip on the government, we should not be really doubting about it.
Okay.
The reason being, there is of course, there are sporadic attacks by Daesh and remnants of Al-Qaeda, but then there are the foreign countries which have a great interest in sabotaging relation between Pakistan and the Taliban government in order to create a sort of a deception, and also to use their deception against Pakistan in terms of its regional reconciliatory and peace and stability approach, because Pakistan has been arguing that it should be Afghan-led and Afghan-owned peace, which we are witnessing now. So I think Taliban's grip on the government is pretty good. Regarding the Al-Qaeda and Daesh, they are international terrorist network which are being rented many times before by the regional actors, like, you know, India has rented them before, and we have witnessed in the past during President Karzai's government, Ashraf Ghani's government, they continued their attacks.
You don't think that in terms of the Taliban leadership itself has, you know, there is defragmentation there is clearly, you know, not all is not in order as far as their own house is concerned?
I wouldn't actually go there because, you know, it's a Taliban's leadership and their tier 1, 2, 3 relationship quite really confidential in terms of their chemistry. But we do know that in different provinces, the law is being provided. Yes, of course, there must be always room for improvement. But given the fact that the way international networks are operating, they have two purposes. One is to unsettle the Taliban government, try to create more chaos, which will indirectly and directly will have implication on Pakistan. And then number two, their issue is that they want to bring maybe the international forces back so they continue to serve their political cause. Their political cause is to spread more instability in the region, which will not be good for China, Pakistan, India, Iran and Russia. That is why, and not for, definitely not for the United States, because the United States at the moment is engaged in different sort of war.
There's
and
Ukraine, there's
Russia, and all other energy crisis. Europe is really boiled down to an energy crisis. Germany and all other countries facing the same challenges. So for us to, I think we have to understand that the...
so you're saying the world in general, and of course the West in particular, has left Afghanistan rather rudderless at this
Yes,
time.
absolutely. I totally subscribe to what you said, because this idea itself is detrimental to their own international security approach, where they decided to, before, you know, they left this country, they decided that they will withdraw and they will like to help Taliban, empower them to govern their country. So instead of involving the foreign actors, and I think that's what we always say as analysts, that we advise also India, that India should be part of the solution instead of being part of the problem. And that, I think, need to also be addressed by international community.
But as far as the international community is concerned, of course, we've sort of spoken about the role and how they're remiss in trying to interfere in a positive manner. Overall, as far as this instability is concerned in the region, of course, you know, they are cognizant of the fact that this is potentially, of course, with two nuclear states, Afghanistan being on the border, that kind of situation will have its own effects. It will erupt itself, and, you know, God forbid, if it's allowed to. Of course, our security is security agencies, our army, our overall, you know, we are cognizant of the situation, we're doing all we can. But what is your overall opinion about this new recent spate of terrorism that's coming now?
Well, I would say, first of all, Pakistan really seeks peace with India and all regional partners. That's for sure. Our consistent governments have this approach. And I think the problem where you are indicated is the source of tension between Pakistan and India and between the regional actors, because it cannot be ignored anymore. And the region, all three regions at the moment, they are at the brink of a literally nuclear confrontation. The reason Pakistan on the side is, Pakistan is a smaller country in size. It has the right to defend itself. And although we have been indicating time and again that there has to be a regional solution for this peace and stability, this current spate of, I would say, attacks and everything is another effort. Because there was a lull period, as we know, this 1 year. And then there is another effort, basically, because Pakistan is facing some challenges, economic challenges, which other countries are also facing right now.
Right, of course, there's an overall economic crisis in the world.
We are not comparing, but the global energy and economic crisis has gripped many countries. So we don't think this is the timing is right for us. But at the same time, we are also capable to neutralize all kind of threats. And I hope that all those international actors and countries would understand that Pakistan had, for many years since 2001, has bounced back with more resilience, and we managed to neutralize all terrorist network on our soil. And we hope that Afghanistan would not let their soil to be used against Pakistan, as Pakistan has promised as well, the same way. So in my view, this current attacks are just also frustration of the terrorist network and the remnants of these organizations, because Pakistan Army and the police and law enforcement agencies, intelligence space operations have produced the result prior 4 months back, if you look 6 months back, all the efforts done in the past 5-6 years had the fruit of peace and stability.
You're talking about the efforts that were made. What about the strategy of the government at present? Does it have to be an amalgamation of both, perhaps talks also along with, of course, taking care of the situation on ground? What is our strategy on the ground?
I think the right strategy has to be, number one, we have to protect the territorial integrity of our country.
Right, of course.
For that, we will never negotiate with any terrorist network. But if at all there is a negotiation, this has to come from the position of strength in which the terrorists definitely have to lay their arms, surrender, and come back to the law and order and negotiate in terms of, where they have not committed heinous crimes against Pakistan Army and the Pakistani civilian population. It is not possible to have a policy which has sort of holes in it where we have to defend it and also we lose on the negotiation side. So I think negotiation and this can go hand in hand. This is how the terrorist networks being neutralized. It's not possible you take one approach. It's not possible because there are many terrorist leadership who given up and they surrender. This is the global.
We talk about the National Action Plan,
yes.
Of course. And, of course, most of it, of course, has been done successfully. But what about those conditions that are still left? And overall, do you think that we need to revisit the National Action Plan again?
I think National Action Plan has two main points which are left out. I think that was an implementation. One was a counter-violent extremism that was not dealt with in comprehensive terms they should have. And secondly, the civilian law enforcement agencies should take more responsibility because they are more in the people. Police, special branch, intelligence bureau, they should come forward and they should be more working on this one in hand with the other security services. But in my view, there is a need right now to implement and have more financial resources to take the subject matter experts on board and have them devise.
To that effect, we've also seen the Interior Minister Rana Sanaullah talk about, the role of the respective provincial governments with regard to this. And you agree, of course, that they also need to come on board, they also need to participate, they also need to, of course, after the 18th Amendment, their role is crucial along with the federal governments, of course.
Well, National Action Plan's spirit actually, basically, I could just say on your program, I had been part of developing this thing. It was sharing national burden. So SNB. So it is about SNB, sharing national burden by all. It is not a matter of one province. The city and all that terrorist activities are about the Pakistan's national identity and attack on Pakistan's national integrity. And so I think sponsored by India and other countries, I think obviously we have to all come together to fight it out. And we should not let it go like this, like you have inconsistent policies that will not produce the result. So therefore, the National Action Plan is exactly meant what National Action Plan should be, that all the provinces, including AJK, GB, and they all come together and they should integrate their resources, their intelligence resources, make a proper, I'm sure there has been a sharing of intelligence on all grounds because of the national intelligence services working on different, I would say, platforms. So to my understanding, it is a very difficult time maybe for the region and for Pakistan, but at the same time, we have great opportunity to fight out and to see that National Action Plans, the remaining components are being implemented in letter and spirit.
What about on a diplomatic front, as far as Afghanistan is concerned? Because, they have come under criticism all over the world also, but diplomatically they need to play their part. They need to have their role, which has to be positive in all of this that's happening.
Well, that depends upon bilateral relations. Look, bilaterally, Pakistan, we should concern with our relation with Afghanistan. How Afghanistan treats other regional countries, we can't really say to them as Afghanistan cannot tell us. So I think I would say that diplomatically, international diplomacy is quite really lurching behind. And so is that of Taliban's own, we do not know what is their strategy, right, towards the international powers. So I would say that it is a responsibility, sole responsibility of Afghan Taliban, whether they would like to have established a relationship with the other countries and what are their conditions. For us as a regional country, we consider Taliban as a neighbor and friendly countries, and we really want to help them wherever we can. You mentioned,
of course, pragmatism would dictate that, considering that they're so low on funds at this time, they need all aid, all kind of help that they can. They need to have some relationship. They need to have with other countries along with Pakistan. The bilateral relations need to take precedence.
I totally agree with you, because you see the Doha peace process when it was implemented was exactly had this viewpoint that certain international powers, including United States, will help Taliban to stabilize Afghanistan, and in return the international forces, ISF and NATO's forces, will withdraw and go to their maybe other assignments like they are now doing in Ukraine. So I think there had been a replay of the excuse me, back the previous instances where US would leave and leave the country maybe high and dry. This time they left on promises that we will provide you funds, we will help you with this.
And none of that seems to have really translated.
Yes, and they did not being translated at all. I mean, they were not translated into actions by the US. And at the same time, if we look into this complex situation for the United States, that basically in the end it is a loss of the US credibility as well, that they promised that we will bring peace to Afghanistan, and these Taliban will help their country to stabilize. And now we see the contrary to that we have the Daesh and other attacking. But I'm sure the Taliban must have been sharing intelligence or must have been help from the US. We do not know really, but it is my hope that the US and Taliban and other countries are working together to neutralize the international terrorist network in Afghanistan, and we hope that that should not be coming to us. We want these terrorists not crossing Pakistan and attacking us, and we hope that the Pakistan and Taliban relationship, the government relationship, on the basis of goodwill that we have, we share the common religion and the border. We like them to be supportive to Pakistan's peace and stability, and we will do the same.
Right. Thank you so much for joining us. Thank you for your very valuable input, Rana Athar Javed Sahab. We will be taking a short break, after which we'll come back and talk about the political situation as far as the former Prime Minister and his take on parliamentary democracy is concerned. Please stay with us. Welcome back. The Prime Minister said today Imran's recent diatribe against parliamentary democracy is the latest in a series of attacks that fly in the face of how democracy functions in modern nation states. His politics is aimed at making his way to power, even if it means undermining foundations this country stands on. We'll be talking about as far as the former Prime Minister and his take on parliamentary democracy, which is what the Prime Minister is talking about, the ramifications of his refusal to return to Parliament that we've seen as far as the federal government is concerned. All of that today. We have with us Javed Jatoon, who's a senior journalist. Javed Saab, can you hear me?
Yes, I'm sure I can.
Javed Saab, we have from time to time spoken about the former Prime Minister's refusal to return to Parliament. That coupled with the fact that, of course, he is in power in 2 of the provinces. We have seen him talking about dissolution of Parliament. We've also seen him talk about talks with the governments, but then, negating that the very next day. Overall, how do you view this in the light of what the Prime Minister spoke today? Of course, the highlight of a democracy, the highlight of parliamentary style of politics is Parliament, is empowering Parliament, the sacred institution. And when there is this flagrant disregard for Parliament that we've seen as far as the former Prime Minister is concerned, of course, when he was in power, we didn't see him come to the assemblies a lot. Overall, how do you view these latest series of events?
Thank you very much, MAHRUKH. If we talk about empowering the parliament, I think the both camps, the government and the opposition, they have been found to be wanting as far as empowering the parliament is concerned, because parliament is the key forum in parliamentary form of democracy, where all decisions should be made after a thorough debate. And when you talk about the domestic policies or the foreign policy, I think the parliament is the ultimate forum where decisions should be made. But unfortunately, every government, barring few examples, have never bothered to give importance to the parliament, particularly the National Assembly of Pakistan, which is the representative body of the people of Pakistan.
But Javed, how do you take the parliament, the point is, how do you take the parliament into confidence when there is this categorical refusal by the former Prime Minister and his party? We saw, we have spoken about it from time to time, his refusal to return to Parliament, his refusal even to acknowledge it. When he refuses to acknowledge the existence of the Parliament at this time, these are elected representatives, whatever he may choose to call them. The point is they were voted in. And to have this kind of disrespect for the Parliament itself is indicative of perhaps, some of the reasons why the vote of no confidence succeeded in his favor.
MAHRUKH, it is the real politic, it's not the idealism right now we are talking about. Imran Khan left the parliament because he believed that while staying in the parliament, he would not be able to put pressure on the political system. And now, when he feels that he has certain cards in his hands, he can go for the dissolution of the KP Assembly and a dissolution of the Punjab Assembly, could paralyze the entire political system. And ultimately, this is what he believes could force the elections on the government, the PDM government. Why should he return to the parliament? Because returning to the parliament once again would be negating his initial stance that he doesn't believe that he should remain part of the parliamentary system right now, and even decided that when he said that he wants to come out of the provincial assemblies as well. So I think expecting Imran Khan to come back to the National Assembly would be asking a bit too much.
But isn't there an inherent, Javed Saab, isn't there an inherent contradiction in all of this? Because on the one hand, he says that he doesn't believe in Parliament. On the one hand, he says he doesn't believe in the system of parliamentary democracy under this Parliament, but yet he wants to contest. He wants his party to become a part of it. Is it because they are not a part of this parliamentary setup? They are not a part of this Parliament, so to speak, therefore, or they're not in majority, so therefore there is this refusal to acknowledge this Parliament. The core of politics, let's talk about the vote of no confidence, of course. There's a lot that has been said on it, but the point is when there is this disrespect, we saw a lot being said at this time, even before, by the PTI about those fragments within the party which did not go in their favor, which people who absconded or people who did not support them, that fragment of those parliamentarians perhaps are indicative of this kind of disrespect that was shown to them. That's what I want to discuss also, because when you have
Yes, you're right, Maruk. We talk about the contradictions. You find these contradictions everywhere. Even Imran Khan is not the exception. He has his contradictions, and big one to name few. He wants to be part of the system, and he doesn't want to be part of the system. He wants to be part of the National Assembly and doesn't want to be part of the National Assembly, and so on and so forth. But the problem with the entire political system in Pakistan is that there are contradictions everywhere. Contradictions in the PDM, the kind of a coalition which doesn't have the like-minded political parties pursuing different political ideologies together on one single point or one single agenda to counter Pakistan Tehreek-e-Insaf and Imran Khan. That is a contradiction we are talking about
But
as far
Javed,
as
we
the
saw
entire
earlier
political
on, as
system is
far as the
concerned.
parliament is concerned, when the PTI was in power, there was, a PDM, there was, or whether it was, the PDM that was formed before that, individual parties also, there was a presence in the parliament. Do you agree? To negate that presence in entirety, withdraw his own people. He talks about democracy. He talks about the fact that there is democracy within his political party, but there doesn't seem to be any kind of democracy when he decides to pull out his people like this, people who have been elected pursuant to a vote which was for a 5-year term. Of course, he is no more the Prime Minister of this country, but those people did not cease to be parliamentarians, just because he ceased to be the Prime Minister, or if the party was not in power, and we've seen that happen in other parts of the world.
Absolutely. I think the answer is there, whatever you said, because once he was ousted from power, then he started the kind of a political move which was centered on confronting the PDM government through whatever means possible, whether moral or not moral, whether political or apolitical. You call them U-turns or you call them contradictions, whatever you call them. I think then it becomes kind of a legitimate struggle as far as any political leader is concerned to come back or to the corridors of power once again. And the only way to come back to the corridors of power, because given all the odds right now, he doesn't want to wait till October. He wants early elections. He wants to force rather early elections, which the PDM government right now is not willing to concede. They believe that the elections will be held on time, and that is next year, somewhere in August, or
When the
rather
Prime
in
Minister
October.
talks about his politics, the former Prime Minister Imran Khan's politics aimed at making it his way to power, even if it means undermining foundations this country stands on. He is also talking about the fact, recently we saw, there is always, whereas the political party itself is concerned, where the former Prime Minister himself is concerned, he's fond of talking of default. He's fond of talking about, fueling the uncertainty, political uncertainty, which started from the march that was, given different dates and times for it. There was, different kind of marches were alluded to. Later, they were stretched also over a certain period of time. Now, we've seen this latest move towards dissolution. When you talk about all of this, certainly his own interest, his own political interest seems to be taking precedence over national interest, because certainly political uncertainty is also leading to economic uncertainty.
Maruk, I think it would be extremely difficult to define the national interest because for one political party, national interest could be to come back to power. In that case, the Imran Khan. In other case, the PDM, which believes that he's undermining democracy, and for them, the national interest is not to do that. For one set of political leaders, the national interest is to continue to struggle and to find a way out where they could force themselves as far as early
But
elections are
Javed Sahab,
concerned.
certainly national interest for everyone at this time would be Pakistan doing better economically. Don't you agree?
Yeah, absolutely. Economy right now is in total shambles, very grave situation. We know where the foreign exchange reserves stand. Our exports have declined, remittances have declined. The economy definitely has taken a very bad hit because of the political instability. I totally agree with you. But responsibility lies in both the camps, the government and the opposition. Why can't they find a way out? Because, as they say, the politics is the art of possible, and it is equally applicable to the PDM as it is applicable to Imran Khan. Because the politics is art of possible. When we say it is art of possible, that means that they can sit together, negotiate. Imran Khan has given, maybe he was just bluffing as PDM is concerned, but and sit on the negotiating table and then find out whether he is interested in long-term solution or not. Economy, of course, I agree, Maruf, with you that whichever party comes into power after the completion of the current government's tenure is going to find itself in a terrible situation because of the economy right now, and there's going to be no miracles in 3 months or 6 months or 1 year. People are very anxiously waiting.
So what is he waiting? So what does he mean? I mean, what does he purport to do? I mean, what does he have out of the box solutions? What does he have to give to the people when he says, you know, there should be early elections? Is he thinking beyond what he perceives as perhaps, you know, his voter base or his political base? Or you know, he feels he might have gained some ground in that department, or is he thinking beyond that at all? Because you know, we certainly have not forgotten the last tenure of the former prime ministers. We don't know, you know, as far as the economic side of things is concerned, there were numerous changes in you know, people as far as his economic team was concerned, whether they were going to deliver, whether they were able to deliver, all of those things when they had come with such a huge, you know, promise. That repetition, is it going to be that? What is overall the plan? We don't seem to be privy to any of that, right?
Maruk, as I said at the outset, that is real politics is not the ideal situation we are talking about. Imran Khan right now feels that he has a massive support of the people. I don't want to get into details why he got that support of the people. He believes that, and we have seen that he has got a support of the people. So why shouldn't he force elections? I mean, any politician at his place would do the same thing what he is doing, because when you are in a position, your only objective is to come back to Islamabad.
But Vedsab, aren't you being, I mean, when we say that any other politician would do the same thing, are we not being unduly harsh on other political parties, or because they have not chosen to sit out of the parliament in the way that Imran Khan Sahab has? They've always been part of parliament. They've been part of the process, if I'm not wrong.
Maruk, I think it is, I mean, if you talk about the PDM, I didn't want to talk about it, but when they were in a position, they started marching towards Islamabad. The PMLN leadership started talking about the interference of the army. Even they started.
Okay, they started marching, or we talk about Mehengai March, or we talk about peaceful demonstration. All of those things granted, but choosing to sit out of the parliament, not acknowledging its existence, pulling your whole party out and saying that, you know, they're not going to be part of this process, isn't that extreme?
I think I really don't believe he's going to go for that. It is probably a pressure tactic as far as Imran's announcement is concerned. Otherwise, he would have gone for the resolution right away. Okay. The two chief ministers, chief minister of KP and Punjab, they have already said that they would oblige whenever Imran Khan gives the call to dissolve the assemblies. I think the only reason he wanted to announce that he had to go back after that long march. Long marches were waiting for some kind of an important announcement on his part. And the announcement did come. And that announcement even surprised the government, even his own party leadership as well. So I believe that he would like to wait for a couple of weeks, and probably they have even given a tentative date of 30th of December. If his demands are not fulfilled, then he would go ultimately, this is what he said. But I think even now it is incumbent on part of the PDM as well that, well, let us, they can say that we are going to invite Imran Khan or his party leadership. They can form a committee, and even PTI could form a committee, and the two committees could engage themselves, talk about the election date, a possible election date. Of course, government shouldn't be sort of blackmailed as far as the deadlines are concerned. They can say that. But it is, but I think there's no, probably there's no other way out as well. The only way seems to be forward is the negotiations. And if there are no negotiations between the two political camps or the antagonists, then what other ways forward? Because there's a complete stagnation, complete deadlock, and there's a political logjam. As you pointed out in your own comments, that economy has taken a real bad hit. So I think it is important for both the political opponents that they should sit together, find a way out. I mean, in politics, what else you do? You engage with each other, you talk about the issues, and sort of there's a difference between rhetoric and the reality as well. Reality is somewhere in the middle, what we are seeing right now at the political landscape.
Right. Thank you so much for joining us, Javed Saab. Thank you for being with us. On that note, as far as the overall situation is concerned, certainly the right approach is to engage. But like I said, we would need some sort of a headway from the opposition also. We would need the former Prime Minister to also become a part of that engagement process, to become a part of that a process as far as talks are concerned. This back and forth exchange of saying that he will participate, but then negating himself is what we see at this time in front of us. Overall, of course, one needs again the kind of political certainty that is needed from all political parties, the government, the opposition, the ability to sit together, the ability to communicate, the ability to have some kind of a working relationship that can perhaps come to some sort of an agreement for both government and opposition. Let's hope that we can move towards that. Thank you so much for joining us today on Perspective.